Firstly, welcome everybody to episode of Tangent TV, this a part of Tangent 31, Trinity's Innovation Festival. Today, I am super excited to have with us Robert Fitzhugh. Robert, thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. Don't know why I'm cheersing you like that's a drink.
Absolutely. So Robert has over 15 years experience in both the Irish and international arts industry. In 2017, created the Dublin Smartphone Film Festival, an international event that is Ireland's only film festival dedicated to films shot on mobile phones. Festival's now in its fourth year, received massive acclaim on the world stage. In 2019, Robert formed Filmsmart, which is designed to help businesses create their own video content for social media using mobile phones. And today we are lucky enough to have him with us to talk us through what's possible in the way of video marketing using limited resources. So often on these webinars, as Robert had said just before here, we would do more of a discussion format, but Robert does have, as you might imagine, a lot of experience in presenting, especially through video. So the best thing I can do today is give him the space to share his knowledge with all of you. So Robert, I want to hand the floor to you. The floor is yours. You can share your screen or whatever works for you, but please take it away, and we're looking forward to hear what you have to share.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for popping on for this. As Joe pointed out, normally this is sort of a conversation, but today I'll try and lean a little bit more into a presentation. If anyone has any questions at all, feel free to throw them in the chat and come back to me a little bit later on, or I can come back to them at the end. This will be kind of a broad overview for about 20-25 minutes, just a little bit about A, what I do, B, why I think it's important, and C, hopefully I can throw you out some free kind of hints and tips and things that I use and things that I think are important. And we can take it from there. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you a presentation. I apologize because I'm not one of these people who's going to try and bludgeon you to death with slides. I'm just incredibly ADD riddled person who has a very hard time focusing. So in order to stop me jumping all over the place, I'm going to share some slides, and it saves you looking at this weird sci-fi room I have gone on here, which looks like I'm constructing my own makeshift set for aliens. But I'll share my screen now. Bear with me a moment. That's not it. Bear with me. All right, so let me just double check that. I just want to make sure everyone can see the presentation on my screen. If I can get a high five on the screen or something like this, so I can know that people can see it, if that's possible. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to take Patricia's word for it and say that she can see it. So I'm assuming you can all see it. And if not, I suggest opening your eyes. But anyway, so my name is Rob Fitzhugh, and as Joe kindly pointed out, I essentially, my main bread and butter is to teach people how to create video and audio content using accessible technology. And what I mean by that is I've spelled marketing wrong in this slide, which I've just noticed. So that's the first faux pas. But what I mean by accessible technology is essentially your mobile phone. It's equipment that you have at your disposal. And I'll go a little bit into, my background just very quickly, and then a little bit about how I got to where I am and what it is I'm doing. So that has been a shocking 36 years, and that is a very well manicured picture of me. And I believe I'm almost wearing the exact same clothes that I am wearing right now, which is A, embarrassing, and B, a sign that I need to go out and buy more clothes. So essentially a little bit just about my background. The reason that's important is because it'll give you an idea of how I ended up where I am and why I think it's important. As Joe kindly pointed out, I have about 15 years worth of experience in the Irish arts scene, which might seem strange considering I'm talking about video marketing with accessible technology. But my background is all about, it is branding. Thanks so much. My background was predominantly in the arts. And what I mean by that is I worked predominantly in the area of arts management. And where that is the idea that I was learning how to run arts businesses based on, I suppose to give you the idea, my course was built around the notion that a lot of arts establishments at the time were created by frustrated artists. So if you can imagine, you had a painter who couldn't sell their pieces or had nowhere to show their pieces, so they set up their own gallery. You had a musician setting up his own studio. But the idea was these were artists first, business operators second. And where my background came in was to train people on the business side of the arts industry. So it was all about targeting grants. It was all about marketing with very little money. It was all about running a well-organized, well-oiled arts industry, arts location, which was basically, you know, working with very little money, and very, very reliant on grants. Obviously, when I finished that, the Celtic Tiger fell apart and there was no more money in the arts. So I wanted the art like Kung Fu. And over the years, I had a burning desire to be a filmmaker. I always had. It was a real passion of mine. So I traveled the world. I worked at various arts events around the world. And then I started studying film here in Ireland. And several questions came to me on the first day that I was sitting in film class. I was a little bit older going back to study film than everyone else in my class. And I couldn't understand, A, why it took so long to make a film, and B, why I couldn't make a film using my phone. And there was a general consensus at the time that the better the equipment you had, the better your film would be. And it was something that had permeated through my whole course. It had permeated through everything we were doing. I remember I'd saved up all my money to buy a camera, which I still have around here somewhere. And I thought, finally, I'm going to make a movie. And then somebody came in with a camera that was twice as expensive as mine. And I remember my head dropped and I said, oh, my movie's going to be crap. And nobody stopped in the background and said, you know, hey, well, what's your movie about? There was none of a conversation about the story you're trying to tell, who you are, what it is you do, what is your film is about. It was all about your equipment's really good, ipso facto, ergo, your film is going to be very good. And I just didn't agree with that sentiment. And I couldn't understand. I had a device in my pocket that could shoot 4K video. I could self-distribute. I could write scripts on it. You know, it was a lot of stuff. You know, I had to learn the format of a script, which I think is very, very important. But I had apps on my phone that could format that for me. So there was a lot of tools at my disposal that helped me strip down what I was trying to do down to the core of what I was trying to do, which was very much just to tell a story. And I found, believe it or not, I'm flanked by technology at the moment, but I'm not I was never technology minded. I remember one of the first conversations I had when I started in film school was, listen, I'll stop you there, teacher. I'm not a tech person. I'm not going to get cameras. I'm not going to get sound. I don't have the attention span for editing. That's all apparently untrue. Editing is one of the most relaxing things I can ever do. My partner doesn't understand. She likes to meditate. I like to sit with headphones on and stare at a screen, re-editing the same clip for 4 seconds over 4 days. I think it's incredible, incredibly relaxing. But the point of the story is that I had created, I couldn't understand why everything took so long, and I couldn't understand why we weren't all utilizing a device in our pocket that could shoot incredible video. What the major pushback I got was, and the major pushback I found in the industry was basically, yeah, sure, you can use your phone as a video marketing device. You can use it to create films, but it doesn't, you're never going to be taken seriously unless you use you know, proper equipment, which I thought was a bit daft. It was like saying to a painter, it's like you painting a picture and then going to someone, hey, listen, what do you think of my picture? And they go, well, what paintbrush do you use? And they go, well, I use this paintbrush. Well, you didn't use the really expensive proper paintbrush, so you're not really a painter, are you? Which to me was a logic didn't make any sense. So I set up the Dublin Smartphone Film Festival, long story short, which is a festival that started, is now in its 4th year, which is Ireland's only film festival dedicated to film shot on mobile phones. And the idea was about building a community of filmmakers. It was about smashing this concept that, you know, the type of equipment you have dictates the content that you make. So I went about trying to kind of smash that idea by having this event. The event turned out to be very, very popular. It was in and around the time that a lot of this had taken roots in the community. People had become very interested in the idea of being able to actually create films and to kind of go around the idea that they needed to learn cameras. They found technology to be a blocking point, much like I did in college. They found technology to be a blocking point. They said, I don't know how to use this. And it really, really prevented them from being able to become storytellers. So my goal essentially was to kind of get around that. So I set up the festival to encourage people to create films in order to become filmmakers. And a lot of the pushback I got was, hey, listen, are you not worried that because everyone can be a filmmaker now, you're going to kind of dilute the industry? And my logic was, well, no, pen and paper has been around for 1,000 years, but not everyone writes a novel. There's still a craft. You still need to learn things. It still requires you you still need to learn and practice to become a successful storyteller. You still need to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And not having equipment as a blocking point to that meant that you were able to actually go out and practice that to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm 4 years into that, the film side of it. And like Lady Gaga's latest video, whether people realize it or not, one of her latest videos was shot on a phone. So, I mean, it's becoming less and less redundant. People are being exposed to this more and more. It seems like audiences don't really notice as long as it's got an engaging story, while the people who are really pushing back are maybe people in the industry who have always used cameras, have always wanted a certain way. But more and more of this stuff is seeping into the mainstream. So I'll be out of a job relatively soon enough. But for the moment, I'll keep plugging away. How I ended up doing what I do in terms of marketing and accessible technology was I was teaching people. I started teaching classes in Ireland and in Europe on using your phone as a filmmaking device. And gradually I noticed that business owners were showing up my classes because they were trying to pick up hints and tips on how to be able to create their own content. They wanted to be able to shoot and edit their own content for their businesses, basically around the idea. I remember I spoke to one business owner. He owned a business in Cork, and basically he wanted to find a way to shoot his own product videos because his phone lines were tied up with people calling and saying, yeah, how does this work? How do you do that? How do you do that? And the answers that he wanted to give his clients were very, very simple. But he was not in a position to be able to give the resources on the phone to be able to answer those questions. So basically he was trying to go about finding a way that he could create his own product videos that would answer the questions to his customers without and free up his staff to be away from the phone. And he wanted to be in a position to be able to do it as often as he wanted to do it. Now I'm a big fan. I like, well, I'll get into this shortly. Like I sometimes people say to me, "Oh, do you not think things should be shot on cameras at all?" And I absolutely do. I film stuff on cameras. I use phones. I use them both. But I think everything has a time and a place. I think if you want to make something, particularly like if you're looking for, it's a lot like, best way to describe it is it's a lot like sorry, I'm thinking of portfolio. This picture that you're looking at right now. Sorry, the word eludes me for what it is. But you know, the kind of oh Jesus, my brain is broken. It's a lot like a picture that you would use for LinkedIn, you would use for your website. It's something where you're going to get a lot of usage out of it over a lengthy period of time. So I would have gone to a photographer to get this picture made. Portfolio picture, that's what I'm thinking of. I would have gone to this photographer to get this picture made. And I will have this picture and I use it an awful lot. The same way I would advise if you want to do something for your website, if you want to do something that's incredibly impactful for your business, by all means hire a professional to do it. Hire somebody to come in, work with them. You're not going to do it all the time, so you want to get a lot of bang for your buck. You want to put money behind it, and you want to create something that's engaging, that works, that is professional, and is a really, really good reflection of your business. I think when it comes to other things like, you know, your content where you're trying to create, maybe you want to run a YouTube channel where you want to create content that you can, you know, where you have to constantly churn out stuff every week, or you want to create stuff for social media, I think you should be able to do it yourself. And I think you have the tools in your pocket to be able to do it yourself. And with a lot of this type of stuff, what I find from working with clients is the equipment side of it is quite simple, and you'd be familiar with a lot of the equipment side of it already. It's the planning side of it, and it's the motivation side of it, especially if you're a business owner and you're running a business. If not worked out correctly, it can be something that will consume your entire day. It'll become something you have to do that you don't want to do. People don't like being on camera. They're afraid of being on camera. They're afraid of the equipment. They're afraid of technology. So they just say to themselves, no, I'll have someone else do it. And I think given the environment we're in and the world that we live in, I think now more than ever, especially with our moving to online, now more than ever it's needed. And B, I think people are a lot more accepting of people's uncomfortableness in front of camera. They're a lot more accepting of a certain style. I mean, you can see it on television. I don't actually have television anymore, but I can see from looking through the window of other people's televisions that a lot of ads and a lot of sponsors had to transition very quickly during COVID to be able to create adverts that were based around, you know, celebrities talking into their phones, talking about their products. There's an ad, given my bubble that I'm in, I'm always subjected to adverts on YouTube by a company called Snappy, I think it is, something to do related to phones. The fact that I can't remember what they do is maybe not testing the ad, but I remember the formats of their ads. And essentially it's customers talking into their phones about the experiences they've had. So people become a lot more accepting of this human, this natural approach, also this less polished approach. So I think there's a place in your cycle for polished videos, and I think there's a place in your cycle for all the rest, and it's stuff that you should be able to do on your own. So That's a long way around saying that about 2 years ago, this business owners coming to my classes for filmmaking gave me this idea, and I set up a business called Filmsmart Pro, which is essentially about training businesses and young entrepreneurs on how to use their own video content. How to create their own video content using their accessible technology. So it's really just about being able to utilize the tools you have at your disposal, low cost tools. I'm talking a microphone for 15 quid, a tripod for 15 quid, or a coffee cup that's got a hole in it. Anything you need to get you professional looking videos, and you should be able to do it at home in the comfort of your own home, and to be able to edit and shoot and use it all using your phone. So I'll get into a little bit. Hopefully that's not a really rounded way of my backstory. I just think it's sort of important because it kind of gives me an idea of what forged the ideas I've been in, or gives you an idea where I've come from, right? So I'm not a stat person. I hate putting stats in things, which is ironic because I'm showing you this. But I just wanted to, basically all this slide sums up is all I'm going to talk about is video is important. Video is important now more than ever. And it's probably a no-brainer at this stage, given how many people consume stuff online, just about how important video is, just about how often it's consumed, how much of an effect it has on people. And to be honest with you, like it says there, 95% of viewers retain a message in video format over 10% in text. And that may be true, but that doesn't mean, you know, shooting something in video as opposed to text is going to work. There is elements to it. There is a story element to it. There's a human element to it that you can't get across with a text or a picture. And I personally think when running social media and stuff like that, I think a nice mix of the two, being able to have some video, being able to have some text, some posts with pictures and text. I think being able to run the two together offers a nice bit of diversity, a nice bit of thing. So I don't think you should dismiss text altogether. I just think that, you know, and it's a no-brainer that video has become very, very prevalent and in need. And what you have is a mass rush of people to go and create video because they know, I got to do more video, it engages with my audience more, people want more video. But unless you're doing constructive video, you're really just, you know, not going to have the same impact you want. I mean, I work with clients, and I had worked with a client, and I had a one-to-one with him recently, and he asked me for feedback on the type of videos he was doing, and he'd really, really embraced the videos. He'd really, really embraced the editing. But the feedback I gave him was, this is great, but you know, it seems to me watching it that there's no thought gone into it. You're really just shooting random clips and cutting it together and stuff, and it seems choppy. He's not really thinking about who's watching it. I don't necessarily think you need to start pumping out video every single day, because video is more time consuming than a picture and a text. And sometimes it's easy just to throw text on a picture and send it off and say job done. But really, I think it's you can post less if you have a constructive and well thought out idea about the types of videos you're trying to do. I generally tend to sit down, I batch my video processes. So so last week I had a bit of time. So I did 8 weeks worth of social media content for for the festival that I run. I just sat down, I spent every day, I got user generated content. So what I did was I recorded interviews with people, and I got them to record the interviews and sent it to me, and then I edited them, that sort of stuff. So I was able to put together content that I'll load out 2, maybe 3 times a week in order to kind of get the word out about submissions and things like that, and get the word out about what it is we do. So I don't necessarily think you need to sit there and start firing out video every single day, because a lot of you will have your own business to run, a lot of you will have your own things to do, and it should be a constructive part of what you do, and not because everything that you do. And that's basically what to take away from this slide, is that video is important, but you know, a thought process behind it will have a greater impact. A little bit about that thought process is basically just to go into, like, marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, it's about the stories you tell. And that might seem like a no-brainer, but essentially it is. Gone are the days of these, maybe I'm showing my age, these Tesco crazy prices type adverts where you would have, you know, it would literally tell you what it is that you wanted to get. So, you know, Super Value would sell meat for $12.99, and you would say, okay, cool, meat in Super Value is $12.99. I know that. And for the most part, that still works in that example. But a lot of businesses have kind of had to pivot away from that. And especially with all this is going on and this increased environment of competition, being able to transition into, you know, no longer kind of, hey, I make this, but this is the process behind how we make it. This is why we make it. This is who we are, because essentially people will buy from you as much as they'll buy your product. And in a hyper competitive market, inevitably you as a selling point will play a major role in that. I mean, if you can buy from 5 different people, but they trust and like you, then that makes all the difference. If they understand what your product is about and what you're trying to do, it's like that adage about Apple where, people buy from Apple because they understood what Apple was trying to do, not necessarily what it is their products did. But it's this idea that you can create something that's personal. Now, I'm not saying some people are very afraid of being on camera. Some people don't like it. Some people find it uncomfortable. I personally, for somebody who deals in this sort of stuff, generally tends to find being on camera somewhat uncomfortable. It makes me talk about 500 times a mile, which you can probably hear now, especially in an environment like this where I have, no faces to look to or anything like that. So sometimes I find it quite awkward. Normally you can gauge a room, especially when you're talking to an audience, or especially when you're talking on camera and there's people around you, then you can gauge a room, you can gauge who you're getting on. But I'm not to say that everyone needs to run out and jump in front of the camera and start being, hey, how are you? Come join things. It's about finding something that works for you, but it's about sitting down and thinking, what is the story? What is my business about? What am I trying to convey to people? Because if you understand what those things are and then who it is you're talking to, you're able to come up with content that is more finely tuned, more focused, and more on brand with you, and less, this sort of fake thing that you're trying to emulate. Because inevitably people will see you try and emulate somebody else, because inevitably when you're uncomfortable, you do try to emulate, they're doing videos, I'll do videos like them. It's about finding a way in for you. And to give you an example about that is when I talk to camera normally for videos, I generally tend to leave the camera record and I cut together all my mistakes and bloopers. And the reason I do that, and I include them in my video, I include them at my start of my video, because the reason I do that is because I'm trying to break down this idea that I too am as awkward in front of the camera as you might be. And here's an example of me being awkward. And to me, it makes me more comfortable, because sometimes I find a lot of this stuff to be disingenuous. I find a lot of this kind of talking online to be disingenuous, and through no one's fault of their own, through no particular reason outside of people are trying to project a certain way. And it makes me feel awkward when I do it. So I generally tend to try and highlight my awkwardness, because it makes me feel more at ease of the whole process. As if I'm sitting down in front of camera to create video content, to tell people about something, and it might be, an ad for a free webinar I'm doing or something like that, or something that's coming up, I will always include something to showcase the human side of me, because I'm trying to showcase that I'm a human being. And I even though I understand all this and I know how to do it, doesn't necessarily mean I always kind of enjoy it or it's something I have to do. It's important to remember though, and I'll get into this a little bit, but as I said, a lot of this stuff is a lot of the technical side of this stuff is quite easy. Where a lot of stuff falls down with my customers and my clients is generally the planning side of it. So generally they know they have to do video. They're quick to create stuff because they think it's great, but they have no plan behind it. And inevitably it becomes something that will overwhelm them. I have clients who took to shooting and editing their own video for their businesses like a duck to water during COVID, because a lot of their stuff had shut down. But we tried to work on plans. We tried to get them to plan to say, listen, COVID's going to end eventually, and you're not going to be able to achieve the same output because you'll have a different workload. And they were like, oh no, okay. And I was suggesting, hey, maybe do one video a week, maybe just keep doing it. You've got a process down, you understand the technical side of it. But some of these people have struggled to adapt when things open back up. Now everything's gone back to level 3. Maybe they'll be able to get back on it. But it's just important to remember that there's an element of planning, but it's also about talking about yourself and what it is you do and what it is you're about. And again, that's this slide covers that. Stories are stories. And essentially, if you can find a way to take something that you're doing, what it is you're about, what it is your business is doing, something, and turn it into a personalized version of that, you have far more of a chance of landing impact with that. And that can be done through anything. I mean, they call them Instagram stories, but that can be done in any way possible in order to kind of convey something. So sometimes there's a real desire just to put up a thing that says, hey, I have a text and here's a piece of an image. Here's an image with some text. My job is done. But you can find a way to convey that as a story. And that's it. And it's funny because I somebody asked me this question before. They said, oh, hey, like, hey, Rob, how do I turn insurance into something like this? And I was like, well, I mean, find how that's going, the person who's getting this insurance is impacted, what's their problems, highlight something that shows off, they need car insurance, their car tire is broken, that sort of stuff. There's always stories in everything, and even the most boring topics generally tend to have a story behind it. In terms of getting people's attention, I'll get into this now, right? But, and again, sorry, my ADD style of talking things generally tends, I cover a lot of stuff as I go, but remember you're human. And that's something that I struggle with. And that's what I mentioned before, is that you just remember you're human. And you know, like when you're on camera, be human, and humans buy from humans. And you know, the irony is that, you know, people used to love going to shops and shaking people's hands and talking to people in stores that they trusted. Okay. And now we're all behind these screens, and it's hard to be able to kind of talk to each other and make that connection. But just whatever you're doing video wise, be yourself. If you think it's daft, so what? If it reflects you and your business, lean into it. Because if you think it's daft and you enjoy it, somebody else will enjoy it. And don't try and emulate everything else. And you're going to hear stuff out there, and I'd be guilty of it. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. You need to do what's right by your sort of business. And just remember to be yourself in whatever way that can be, because the minute you're disingenuous on camera, people can tell, and it puts you off. So it's finding a way to be yourself and finding a way to have some sort of structure in order to make sure that you keep going. I'm going to get into the technical side of it now, guys. Sorry. This here is just about, the best way to describe this is just a little bit about social media, and a little bit just to say, like, you've probably all heard the term micro-influencers by now. And essentially, if anyone hasn't, a micro-influencer is this idea that, you know, businesses or sponsors or people are more likely to invest in somebody rather than give Kim Kardashian, who has 100 million followers, money. They give, you know, they look for influencers who have 1,000 followers, or, you know, less than 5,000 followers, and they take the money that they would give Kim Kardashian, they spread that out over 20 accounts. Because the idea is that the way we're becoming more tribal, we're becoming more accustomed to buying from people we know. And the example we have of that is, I've always wanted to get a drone. I keep meaning to buy a drone. Obviously, I'm a target for adverts for drones because I'm always looking at the footage and videos and stuff like that. Haven't pulled the trigger on it until my friend bought a drone, and he was flying the drone on Dollymount Strand, and I could see him flying a drone in places that I knew. He told me how much it cost, and straight away I went out and bought a drone. So the idea is that, you know, having this focus on followers and having this idea of, I've got to have so many thousand people because that's an interest in my business. Really, the emphasis should be on conversations. It should be the conversations you're having. Every time you post a video, it should be the conversations that come from that. You should be designing your videos or thinking about how my videos are going to provoke conversations. Because at the end of the day, it's the engagement that you want with people. You want to be able to talk to people, and people want to be able to talk to you. So having likes on your pictures is someone's kind of just, you know, you're not getting that engagement and that reaction from people. You want people to talk and to comment. I don't know if anyone uses Ninjalinx. Ninjalinx is a really good free tool online. I'll get to that now in a moment. Sorry. Ninjalinx is a really good free tool online, basically designed to, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but you can actually go in and you can look at your engagement rate, and you can look at the engagement rate on other people's Instagram accounts. So I use it as a really good tool to say to myself, how do I up my engagement rate? And the irony being is that my engagement rate dropped considerably because during COVID, I wasn't really doing anything, but I was able to go in and I'm able to target it. So what you really want to do is you want to look at your engagement rate. You want to look at the percentage of people that are engaging with your content out of the number of people that you have. So I think if you have less than 1,000 followers, your engagement rate should be about 8%. And the higher up your followers go, obviously the engagement rate is lower because the expectation is that you're talking to a lot less people. So really it's to use a tool like that, and that's just one tool I'm thinking of, that'll allow you to be able to figure out what your engagement rate is, and then to come up with a plan and be able to construct content that's designed to provoke engagement. Because it's the comments on your posts and things like that. It's that back and forth between people. That's where the kind of the real interest is, and that's where you kind of build a rapport with people. And that's normally my target. I don't care about likes. I don't care about anything. My target is to try and get between 8 to 15 comments per post or per thing that I post. If I'm posting a picture with text, I generally tend to have some sort of question or some sort of conversation starter to get something going in the comments. But the idea is really that I'm just trying to build an engagement. And Ninjalinx is a tool that I use quite regularly in order to kind of analyze that. If anyone, Ninjalinx, it's basically analytics with the word ninja at the end of it. In terms of, someone asked me about planning tools, right? If you're looking for planning tools for videos, right, to come up with, obviously there's planning tools around kind of how to structure your posts once it's done. This is very much around the idea of getting content, of creating ideas, because sometimes people have very few ideas, or the idea part is very, very struggle. Several things that I use are, I'll start at the bottom, work my way up, is searching Facebook groups, which is I don't know if that might be a no-brainer to people on the call, but essentially what I do is I go into Facebook groups that are targeted around my business. Sometimes I use this an awful lot for the filmmaking side of it, and I go into the Facebook groups, and you can search in the Facebook groups for keywords that people are saying. I find out the questions that people are asking in the Facebook groups. To give an example, I recently did a whole lot of video content and podcasts around film funding, because I was searching through Facebook groups and people were asking an awful lot of questions about should they raise money for their short films? Can they use Kickstarter to raise money for their short films? So I decided to design video and audio content based around that. Researching the competition is great. You can obviously look up what other people are doing in your industry, see what they're doing. Don't copy them, don't steal from them, but find a way to see what they're doing and maybe pivot away from that. I'm a firm believer that if everyone's doing something, try to do the opposite, because it's easier for you to make waves if you're sort of swimming against the current. So research your competition, find out what it is they're doing, and then try to expand on that. And then I use plugins like Keyword Anywhere, and I use TubeBuddy. If no one's familiar with the two of those, they're a godsend. TubeBuddy in particular is an absolute godsend. What Keyword Anywhere is, it's a Chrome extension if people don't use it, and essentially what it does is you pay for it by credits, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to see how often people search specific content. So you're able to see the search volume for a specific question, so related to your business. So it'll tell you the total amount. So you're able to see how many times in a month people are looking or asking for these things, and then you're able to craft your video content based around that. Same thing works with TubeBuddy. Where TubeBuddy is great is you might create an incredible video for your business, and I see it all the time, but you don't do any sort of research on what people are searching in YouTube, and YouTube is content driven. So I worked with a recruitment agency recently, and they wanted me to look at the videos that I had on their YouTube, and what their videos on their YouTube were job advertisements. And they'd done videos for job advertisements and put them on YouTube. And the first question I asked them was, well, who's looking for a job on YouTube? And because how often is anyone going to sit on YouTube and go, I'm looking for a job in IT, IT jobs Dublin or whatever. So it was about crafting content that would be, content driven, in the sense that people were looking for it. You're answering questions. So using tools like TubeBuddy really help you, because you could create a video and you could name it something and the naming is wrong, and it won't rank anywhere. So using TubeBuddy will allow you to see exactly, it'll allow you to see the exact keywords people are using, and it'll also allow you to get a keen understanding of what you should call your video. And it's great because you can use TubeBuddy will allow you to go in and look at you can look at a similar competitor's video, and you can look at their SEO ranking based on, and you can look at their SEO ranking on that video, and then you can say your SEO ranking is really like gross story. I was working with a person recently for, they were trying to create their vegan raw dog food dietitian, and we were trying to create video content, and the main video they were trying to create was about, I won't get into it, was about anal glands in dogs, is what I will say. And the top video for that subject was basically, had been number one for a long time, but their SEO score was quite poor. They'd never put anything into it. It's just a lot of people had been searching for it, and that was the video that kept coming up. So the idea is, if you use something like TubeBuddy, you're able to go in and see what a competitor's SEO score is, and then you're able to go into YouTube, craft your video, and be able to label it and call it something that will allow you to figure out you'll be able to go further with your video than you would if you just labeled it, hey, this is my product, and away it goes. So I'm built around accessible technology. So my idea, one more thing for this idea is, if people are looking for a way to do idea generation for the videos, answerthepublic.com is a really good site. And what answerthepublic.com does is it basically tabulates everything that people are, it tabulates all the searches. When you type something in and it kind of auto completes on Google, it tabulates all them, and when you put in a specific topic, it will show you all the questions that people are asking on Google in and around that. How to make a chocolate cake, why should I make a chocolate cake, if you just put in chocolate cake. So it'll give you an idea of everything that people are asking the internet, and then you're able to kind of craft your videos based around answering those questions. In terms of filming, I'm a big fan of, if you have a camera, use a camera. I have predominantly always used phones. I have done for the last couple of years. I occasionally use my cameras. For the most part, I use my cameras as elaborate webcams at the moment in time. If you are going to go down the road of using your phone as a filming device, there's tons of different amazing apps that you can use in order to kind of improve your video quality. If you're an Android user, you can use apps like Open Camera, which is a free app, and that gives you some extra control over your camera. What they always used to say is to not use your traditional camera has a filming device, because you could get apps that will give you more control. And what I mean by that is apps that will allow you to do things like, you know, focus on specific parts of the screen and make sure that everything is lit and exposed correctly. If you don't want to go down that road of apps, if you don't want to go down that road, if you just want to be able to create stuff very, very quickly, one thing I would advise to do, if people don't notice, it's a simple tip and people don't know it sometimes. If you're an iPhone user, an Android user, before you press record, if you're doing an interview or something like that, hold your finger down over the screen on the person's face. Why you would do that essentially is it locks the screen, it locks the focus and the exposure. And what I mean by that is, normally if you have your camera and you're swinging your phone around in front of a light, you're going to see subtle changes in light because the sensor inside your phone is basically saying, hey, listen, it's trying to be your friend. Your phone is always trying to be your friend, so it's automatically trying to adjust light and darkness to say, hey, you're pointing over there, I'll make it this bright. I'm pointing it over there, I'll make it this bright. But essentially what you do is, by holding your finger on the screen, if you're an iPhone user, you should get a yellow thing that pops up, says AF lock. And essentially what that does is that ensures that your screen is locked and that you are not, no matter where you turn the phone, you're going to have the same lighting and exposure regardless of what's going on. So if someone walks into the room or opens a door, nothing's going to change. And this is some way to control and to make things look a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. The other thing I will say is don't pinch the screen, and I'll get into that next one. But for those who pinch the screen with photos and things, you can get away with it slightly, but it's not a real zoom, it's an artificial zoom. If you're a Huawei user, like a high-end Huawei user, their telephoto lenses are getting a lot better, so you're getting a lot better quality in terms of how far you can get with your zoom. But for the most part, it disintegrates the image and makes it look poor. So what they always say is, if I'll get to it here, what they always say is, if you want to zoom with your feet, and what I mean by that is, if you want to if you want something in focus, walk towards it. If you want something out of focus, walk away from it. Sorry, not focus, zoom. If you want something close, walk towards it. If you want something, sorry, that sentence makes no sense. If you want to get close to something, walk towards it. If you want to get away from something, walk away from it. Don't pinch, because you'll ruin the quality of your image. Flight mode is essential for these sort of things. So like shooting on your phone is really, to be honest with you, you can get really, really professional quality looking images from it. There's really no issue about what it is. The quality of it is good enough that for the most part you wouldn't notice. As I mentioned, Lady Gaga's latest video, or her second last video, was shot on a phone. If people don't know that, it's like I won't show it, but it's shot on a phone. It looks incredible. You would not know as an average audience person. So in terms of quality and using your phone as a device, most people won't notice. It's just about having the confidence to be able to use it in a more professional manner. What I would recommend, if anyone is working from home, or if anyone has a business or anything like that, is to invest in a small tripod. You can buy them on Amazon for about 15 quid. Ideally, you want something that's more than 65 centimeters high, or inches high. You want something that you can stand and talk to as well as sit and talk to. If you get a smaller one, they're quite cheap, and that's fine, but it means you're limited on what you can do with it. But you can buy them online for dirt cheap. In this picture here, you have this thing here is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. They're these plastic smartphone rigs. You can buy them. They range from 10 quid up to 50 quid. And the design is essentially always the same. You'll see people talk about these really expensive one called Beast Grip. That's fair enough. That one there is 12 quid. And essentially what they do is they're mounts for your phone. And you're able to, as you can see here, you're able to mount microphones to them. You're able to mount lights to them. So generally, like this one here that you're looking at is a really expensive version of that. And essentially why you would have on them is if you can mount one of them to a tripod, you're able to have everything contained in one single device. Generally, when I teach businesses, advertise businesses, I set up their offices, I generally tend to have to advise them to have some sort of unit like this, some self-contained filming thing that they can put everything on, and they don't have to faff about and worry about things like that. Those microphones there you're looking at in that picture, they range for about 30 quid, and that's a pretty decent one. If not, I would recommend people getting a lavalier mic, which is if anyone's not familiar, it's one of those mics you run up your shirt to attach here. You can buy them for about 12 quid. And the idea is that once you have that, it circumnavigates the sound in your phone, and you're able to create incredible, sharp, well-sounding audio through your phone. And audio is the real trick. People often talk about the visuals and the limitations of the visuals you get from phone, but audio is where it really matters. You can have, as long as the audio sounds great, people are very, very forgiving of what they see. It doesn't work the other way around. If your audio is poor, it generally tends to turn people off. So if you do want to start doing things for yourself, you want to start doing them at home, you want to start doing them in your office or things like that, having a simple setup like that with a rig that allows you to attach everything is going to make life a lot easier. The only reason that rig exists, by the way, is really just fundamentally to control and keep it stable. I would recommend there's a real, when I do classes, normally I ask people at the start of each class to hold their phone up and just to record a video about their business without asking them or giving them any sort of insight into what they need to do. And generally people's default setting is to hold their phone like this and talk into it and be like, hey, yeah. But I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to think about who's watching it and where they're watching it. And if you're putting that on IGTV or putting it on Instagram, that's no problem. But if you want to put it on YouTube, maybe switch it over. If that's your intention, if that's the style you want to go for, fair enough. It's just to think about where your audience is going to consume these things and then modulate accordingly. Keeping it stable is ideal. And phones, one of the main limitations that phones have, if people probably know already, is they have they come with an image optimization stabilizer for the most part. Some of that software, sometimes it's real. And really all that means is if it's software, it's software that kind of manipulates the image after you've filmed it to make sure it's as stable as possible. And if it's an actual physical thing built into the phone, if you can imagine your lens is on these little kind of rubber bands, and when you turn, it tries to control. And that can do a lot, and it's getting better, but it can only do so much. So I would recommend a small tripod. And if you don't have a tripod, maybe you can actually legitimately use a coffee cup. You can cut a hole in the top of it and slide your phone in the top. If you've got a cup from Costa Coffee or something like that, you can slot it in, no problem. Outside of that, you can use anything, a stack of books. The main thing to remember is just don't hold it, because if you hold it, you're inviting tremors and things like that you won't be able to see back on your screen. Not that you need it, but one of the main reasons I have this thing here is it's a field monitor, and the only reason I have it is because I like to be able to see clearly exactly what it is. And sometimes on my phone, my screen might be a little bit too small, but that's only for certain things. If you want to hold your phone, you're inviting this idea that you're going to bring kind of glitches and errors into it. So anywhere you can kind of remove that is ideal. I'm just going to talk a little bit about subtitling, and I'll give you one or two apps and why I think this is important. So subtitling to me is adamantly important. I don't know how many people spend time on social media and Instagram. They look at people's videos. There's an awful lot of people with the sound off just going, which is great. If you're a celebrity, people want to click on, they want to find out what they're saying. But for the most part, if you're talking about your business and it's just you talking into a camera, what you're asking people to do is you're asking people to double click on something. So you're asking people to say, not only are they supposed to stop and look at you, but they're now supposed to double click and hear what you're talking about. So people's attention spans are poor. On Instagram alone, we process images about 60,000 times per second. So if you can imagine, you're scrolling through things relatively quickly, very fast. So in order to capture someone's attention, you're going to have to try and do something or do everything you possibly can to get your idea across. I could say to you, listen, you could put all these flashy visuals and cuts to start, but I find that by subtitling things, I generally tend to subtitle everything. So if I'm talking on an Instagram story for 15 seconds, generally I tend to subtitle it. The reason being is that I don't see a lot of people spend a lot of time doing that. I think it increases the chances of people stopping and looking at your stuff, or at least understanding what it is you're talking about as they're speeding by. And I just think it's really, really important because people's attention spans have gotten so poor. So sorry, go forward here. So as I said here, 92% of people are watching video with the sound off. Now that's not necessarily true for something like Twitter. Sorry, for something like, I was going to say Tinder, for something like TikTok, where sound is so specific, people will watch and they're expecting to see things with sound. But for things like Facebook and things like Instagram and stuff like that, people are generally consuming that on the go. They're generally consuming it with the sound off. I don't know if those numbers will skew now that people are working from home a little bit more, but the idea being is essentially that, you know, you need to maximize your chances of getting people's attention. So I generally tend to subtitle. How I do that, it's funny, if anyone has actually ever sat down to subtitle, they have incredible leaps and bounds in technology, but still the most reliant way to subtitle, if you're subtitling a video, is by copy and paste, which I thought was insane. You can pay services to do it. YouTube will do it for you and you have to tidy it up, and that's fair enough. YouTube have an option in it to caption. That's great. Facebook now have an option. You can subtitle directly onto your video while you're uploading onto Facebook. It's really, really handy. If you want to upload a video directly off your phone, or you want to do something that is on the go or something like that, I generally tend to use the two apps below. As AutoCap for Android and Mixed Captions for iPhone. I find everything on the iPhone generally tends to work a little bit better. It's a little bit more streamlined. So Mixed Captions for the iPhone is great. You do have to pay for it. It's a lot like a subscription service. So what you do is you load your video into it, and then what it does is it reads what you're saying, much like YouTube does when it captions. So it guesses what it is you're saying, and then you go back in and tidy it up. As with both of these apps, it takes a little bit of time to it takes a little bit extra time to add subtitles to your video. But what I would say is there's value to doing it. And there's a value to do it because other people don't bother doing it as much. So if you can actually spend the time to do it, and to be honest with you, if you're doing something for 15, 20 seconds or a minute long, it doesn't take that long. The app, particularly Mixed Captions, is very intuitive. It'll figure out exactly what it is you're saying, and then you really just have to go in and tidy up some things on it. But I do think there's real value to subtitling what you're saying, because I think it's going to give you that extra edge. It's going to give you that extra little bit of impact. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised how easy it is. I do an awful lot of desktop editing, and it's very, very copy and paste. But when I'm on the go, I use subtitling apps on my phone, and I was always very surprised at how quick it was. If it wasn't quick, I wouldn't subtitle. I wouldn't put in the effort, because it would be too slow for me. But it's fast, and it's an effective way of getting a tool across. So they're just two apps I would recommend to use in order to try and increase your impact and get more of a connection with people online. Yeah, the RD edit. Sorry. So I'm conscious of time. So really, I just wanted to talk a little bit about editing on your phone. The app that I use the most is KineMaster. I don't know if anyone's familiar with KineMaster. KineMaster is an incredible app. Normally I'd have time to go through it and show it to you, but in this particular instance, in this environment, it's not going to be the same. But what KineMaster essentially does is it's a mini editing suite in your phone. There is a better one. There is a more complicated one called LumaFusion, but KineMaster is a very, very accessible, easy to use app that you can get incredible results out of. I generally tend to edit most of my stuff. Actually, up until last year, I would have edited almost every project on my phone. A lot of the stuff that I did was online, was on the go. I do same day turnaround edits on site. I'd be working with clients a lot. I've drifted back onto my desktop just because I've been in this office a lot more in the last while. So generally I tend to do a lot more on my desktop. But I think KineMaster is a really fast and efficient way. What's great about KineMaster is a lot of stuff you have to design. So say you want to have certain sort of font and text come in, you have to design it. KineMaster has all this stuff pre-built into it. It's like iMovie is great in the sense that iMovie will allow you to cut clips, and that's fine, but iMovie is very, very basic, where KineMaster allows you to do a lot of really, really professional looking things and rather professional quality stuff, and be able to do it kind of all on your phone. And you'd be very, very surprised once you get into it, how kind of intuitive and how much you can do with it. And it's available for both Android and iPhone. So it's kind of a no-brainer. It's very, very accessible. I'm a big fan of Quick. I don't know if anyone on this uses Quick. Quick, or to a lesser extent Majesto, because Majesto is quite expensive. If no one's familiar with Quick, essentially what Quick is Quick is a free app from GoPro that allows you to quickly edit, hence the name, pictures and video. So essentially what it does is you just grab a bunch of videos, a bunch of pictures, and it has music templates that are royalty free. You pop it in there, and it creates a video for you within seconds, and it does there you can go in and you can intuitively, you can play with it, but it creates in a very, very polished, very professional looking video for you in a matter of seconds. And I think Quick is great for quick social media videos. So if you're out and you don't have time to put something together and you're after taking a bunch of random photos and you've shot a bit of video, Quick is a really fast way to edit that together. What I will say is, from people I know who use Quick, they fall in love with it at first and they use it all the time, and then gradually over time they find the limitations in using it, and they generally tend to drift onto something that gives them a bit more control, something like KineMaster, which allows them to get in, move around, kind of edit and make changes, stuff like that. Sorry, I'm conscious of time. Does anyone, I'd rather just take questions from people. Does anyone have questions? So someone asked me, what's the most important part of video that the most important part of video that people forget? If I'm honest with you, from my time kind of working with people, and this may sound lame, it's the planning part. It's the part where people don't sit down and figure out what it is they're going to do. And that to me is more important than a lot of other things. Like, I don't know if people are familiar with the storyboarding process. I'm not saying you need to storyboard, you need to sit down, you need to draw up and plan everything. But I generally tend to scribble little boxes on a sheet of paper and keep in my pocket, just to keep me focused. Because a lot of times people don't, they get into it, they roll out their sleeves, they go, I absolutely love this, but they don't really think about what they're going to do with it. And the video generally tends to reflect that. And the story that I told you earlier on about one of my clients who shoots it goal, he's just doing video because he wants to, he thinks that that it's being, and he's not getting any sort of connection with anyone. No one's leaving comments, no one's talking, because his videos aren't really stories. There's nothing to them. They're just a collection of random images to music and things like that. And there's no flow to it. So to me, that's one of the things that I learned very quickly when I was training people, is that they could do all the video stuff is relatively simple. Once you get into it, it was the planning part of it. The one other thing I will say is audio for a lot of people is an afterthought. It shouldn't be. Sometimes people put together something that looks great and then they just talk into their phone and it doesn't work. So two things that I remember is to really focus on audio. And I would absolutely, of everything else, I would say to you, in terms of, like, you could do all this, you could go out and shoot videos. You don't need equipment, right? You don't need a tripod. You can find a way to stack it on something. You don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need to spend fancy apps. You don't need that. What I would say is, if you had 12 quid to invest in a microphone, that is the only part. If you only had money to buy one thing, I would buy a microphone, because I think that is incredibly important. Also, I would also say, just lighting. Like, you don't need to be a master class at lighting. I'm a bit snookered in this room as an example. I would rather face the window, but I can't. The window is over stairs and it's in an attic. So I'm snookered. So I have to use an artificial light source. But anything you're doing, if you're going to do it in a bright room, if you can stand facing a window, if you can let that light in on your face, natural light, it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be off, setting up lights all over the place if you don't have them. But it's just, these little things tell people something about you. Oftentimes I even do Zoom calls with people and they're facing away from the light and it's very, very dark. And I work with a lot of businesses, and my logic looking at them is, well, you're trying to project a certain image. You're trying to project a certain thing about yourself. And I can't see you. And I can't see your face because you're dark. So having this bright natural light, if you can focus on that, and decent sound, I think, and you're off to a winner. Hi, Miriam. The iPhone app for subtitling is Mix Captions. And one thing people ask me about iPhone versus Android, to be honest with you, there's no, in terms of video quality, you're not going to see much of a difference. I actually have both. I have an iPhone and an Android. You're not snookered by having one or the other. The only difference I would say is that an iPhone, generally they tend to, if you can imagine, app manufacturers and equipment manufacturers are making stuff for this with iPhone for the same device year on year on year, while Android is spread out on handsets across thousands of different handsets. So I have apps on one phone that work really well that are kind of buggy on other phones. I have certain limitations, but in terms of quality and stuff like that, you're not going to see much of a difference. Yeah, advice for content creators to try and create in quarantine. That's a really good question, right? And it's very interesting, because I can't speak for you guys, but when like I predominantly work online. I predominantly work with videos and things like that. But when COVID hit, I bottomed out. I didn't want to do anything. I barely wanted to press record. I didn't want to do anything. So it's finding ways to motivate yourself. And oftentimes it feels like you're shouting into an echo chamber as well. So finding ways to to try and create. There's 1,000 different interesting stories you can tell just in your room. I mean, I remember, I don't know if anyone remembers being in school, or maybe I'm showing my age, when you were punished and you used to have to say, your punishment used to be write 2,000 words on life inside a golf ball. Do you know what I mean? And we used to be like, oh my God, that's terrible. But in actual fact, that's an incredible thing. With limitations breed, they always say limitations breed creativity. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that you're trapped in your house, you can't travel very far, doesn't mean that you don't have stories you can't tell. Doesn't mean you can't craft incredible stories. And in fact, like, there's an honesty, that there's less artifice to being in your house and being trapped in where you are. And I think being able to translate that across has more of a chance of engaging people than some sort of flashy video where you can fly your drone all over the place and all that sort of stuff. But again, it depends on your audience and what it is they're interested in. I'll tell you what I'll do, anonymous attendee. I can't think of any YouTube channel creators or anything off the top of my head that are a good inspiration. I deal with so many different ones, a lot of Irish ones, in terms of just creating interesting, engaging content. But what I'll do is I'll find, if you want to follow me on social media there. That's one of my social media accounts. It's not the festival one. Or if you want to add me on LinkedIn, I'll be sure to send you on a list of them. I have a list somewhere. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Does anyone have any more questions? I'm conscious that I waffled on for way longer than I should have. Sorry about that, Joe. I'm exactly an hour, in fairness.
You're dead on, Robert. I think like the questions are coming to a close. Like, I really appreciate all of the things that you've shared. Like, I'm so glad that we let you kind of run, because there's so much content in there, so much value in there. So for anybody who's been watching this like live, amazing. Thank you for coming with us. Amazing that you got the opportunity to ask so many great questions. Anybody watching it on the Tangent TV YouTube channel, I'm going to do my best to go back and find all of the links to everything that Robert shared and have them in the description.
Best of luck.
But Robert, the only question I have for you, just before we kind of wrap up here, is if obviously people see your social media, your website there, but I'm curious, like, what's next for you? If people want to follow your journey, what are you working on? What's the next big thing for Robert?
The next big thing for me is, well, to be honest with you, it's been a strange time. I suppose it's been a strange time for everyone. When all this kind of COVID stuff started, I had to pivot my business a little bit at first. And one of the things I talked about planning with people was, I found one of the drawbacks is some people were quick. A lot of my clients are quick to want to create video, and they're great at it, and you work with them. But a lot of people find they don't have the time for the editing side of it. So I was able to pivot my business into a structure where I would actually physically do the post-production side of it for a lot of my clients. So a lot of my clients, I've set them up with green screens in their office. They create the content, they send it to me, and I'm able to create it. I'm able to do the post-production work on it, which is great. I'm able to do all the SEO side of it, which is perfect. So that's kind of really opened up my business a lot. In terms of where I'm headed next, I'm doing an awful lot of work on the filmmaking side of it. I'm working with the British Film Institute. I am working with a few other locations. Essentially, it's been quite unique in the sense that you can imagine a lot of film colleges started back up. And the main draw for film students is that, you learn film, but you get access to high-end equipment, and they can't go to college. So they need to be able to find ways, accessible ways to tell stories. Like this attendee asked about content creators trying to create in quarantine. They need to use the equipment they have at their disposal to make films for their college courses. And so I've been doing a lot of that. I've been working with a lot of film students, and I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs just out the gate in terms of even the event we had this week with Red Bull, in terms of perfecting the perfect pitch video, and being able to kind of create an engaging pitch video yourself, and the tools that you can utilize online for free to allow you to be able to do that.
Amazing. Well, that's exciting stuff to come. Like, I'm super excited to see like the rest of it. If everybody wants to follow Robert, he has all his social medias just here on the page. Follow him on LinkedIn, Instagram, go to his website. And if you want to, if you haven't gotten enough Robert this week, he will be at the Red Bull basement event in Tangent on Thursday. So check in for that as well. But Robert, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with the Tangent ecosystem.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks so much, and thanks for letting me talk. Thanks for letting me talk nonstop.
No,
Okay.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap the webinar here. Thank you everybody for coming along, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect. Thanks so much.